So hi internet family, this is my second video, and what I'm going to go into here, or at least the first, maybe this is a first part, it's like my history in the organization of Watchtower. So I have notes, trying to keep myself on track here. Anyway, my mother started studying in 1975. It's ironic that she started studying in 1975 because those of us that have been or were in there for a while know that 1975 is one of the years that it was predicted that the world would end, or that the Great Tribulation would start. But that happened to be the year that my mother started studying and that we started attending the Kingdom Hall. I don't remember a whole lot from my childhood when we first started going, because I was 6 turned 7 during that time. So I'm 60 now. I don't remember a lot from what went on there. One thing though I will say that I do remember is my mother sitting us down, me and at the time my 2 siblings, and letting us know that we would not be celebrating Christmas anymore. We wouldn't be doing our birthdays anymore. But that's all I remember. I just remember sitting down in the living room and being told that. I honestly don't remember having any particular feelings about that. I may have, I just don't remember having any particular feelings about that. So it was just a thing. I guess we just kind of went along as kids. What I do remember, so funny, when I think back to when we first started going to the Kingdom Hall, I remember thinking how ugly the carpets were and wondering why there were no windows in the building, as a kid. It's the weird things that you remember. And they used to have fake plants. I always wondered why fake plants. I mean, they were obviously plastic. But hey, it was the 70s, so I guess that was the thing. Another thing that I kind of remember when we were little kids, my elementary school, middle school, is I kind of remember my family not really fitting in with the other families at the hall. And now I know, but back then I couldn't understand why. But it was basically because my father wasn't coming in with us. We were considered part of what did they used to call it? A divided household. That was the term that the organization used when you had one parent that was in and one that wasn't. So we were part of a divided household, and that kind of informed how we were treated. We didn't get invited to a lot of gatherings at first. I remember that bothering my mother some, because I can remember her talking about it and mentioning it with the sister that she studied with. I don't want to use names. I'm trying not to use names. Sometimes it's so easy just to let the names fall out of your mouth when you're talking. But I do remember it did bother my mother a little. However, the older we got, things changed because, then as kids we started doing a lot more. I remember, becoming an unbaptized publisher and then asking to join the Theocratic Ministry School. And going back, I do remember when we first started going out in service, because we would go out with the sister that my mother studied with, who was a pioneer, and we'd always have to go all the way in the back of her station wagon. Now, depending on how old you guys are, if any of you are Gen X, You remember those big station wagons? I mean, God, the thing was the size of a yacht. And in the back, there wasn't necessarily a seat. Although hers did have a third seat that faced the rear of the car. And we'd always have to be put back there. I guess it was a thing. I guess it probably wasn't anything malicious about it or whatever. But yeah, we'd always end up in the back of the station wagon. And I remember going, knocking on doors, handing people, the Watchtower and Awaken the Tracks. And back then, we actually used to ask for money for them. I think when we started going out, I think it might have been a nickel for each magazine. And then I remember it going up to a dime. I don't remember when. And it didn't take me long to start actually talking at the doors. It really didn't. So as we got older, we used to talk at the doors more. And like I said, I asked to join a theocratic ministry school. And it wasn't like there was a whole lot that as a girl you could do in the organization. So being on the theocratic ministry school was kind of exciting because it was something I got to do. And I got to do more research, to prepare the talks. And even from day one, I didn't have any helps with preparing the talks. I wanted to do it on my own. And I never have a lot of props to give myself, but one thing I will say, I was a good student in the theocratic ministry school, and I always graded very well. And I became one of the go-to sisters when people didn't show up or they weren't at the meeting or they weren't going to give their talks or whatever. But I swear I must have substituted nearly every week. Because for somebody that wasn't going to be there or wasn't able to give their talk. And I didn't mind doing it because I was good at coming up with a talk like in a few minutes. And a lot of times I just would use my sister because she was the same. So yeah, I did that. So as we became more and more involved as kids, then things changed with my family. Then we started getting invited to the gatherings, and we weren't left out of things so much. So it made it easier going to the hall. So I guess you could kind of say I eventually became an Uber witness. Yeah, I was an Uber witness. And I can even say that going out in service, I was probably a little arrogant when talking to people at the doors because I just knew we had the truth, and I knew that I knew more than these people, and I could whip out scriptures, and I was good at it. And this is my first time ever in my life admitting that I was actually good at something. Because in all honesty, I never felt good at anything. I never felt anything I did was good enough. But if I would be completely honest with myself now, I was good out in the ministry. I really was. So I also, as I got older, became a rabid studier. And when I say that, I mean, my watchtowers and awakes and everything were always done way ahead of time so that I could do extra research. So I made sure I got them done. Usually I had everything done by Sunday evening. That also served a dual purpose because I didn't want to have to worry about studying for the meetings and then also doing my schoolwork because that was just too much. So I would make sure that everything was done over the weekend. Wouldn't go outside and play, because I need to get my studying done. Now that's kind of a two-edged sword. Somebody that likes to learn and likes to study, because I can remember that during this time period was when I also learned you don't ask questions and you should not be studying outside of the material that was given to you by the organization. Case in point, The first time I ever went to an elder with a question. I was studying about the fall of Babylon, right? And of course, I used the Watchtower and the stuff that they gave us about that. And what was the book? Oh God, there was a book I read. It was red. I can remember it was red with the cover was when they used to do those old embossed covers. I think it was called The Fall of Babylon the Great and the Herald of... No, that was what the Watchtower used to be called. Oh man, I can't remember the name of the book. But it was all about the fall of Babylon the Great and how that related to the tribulation. So I had finished reading that book. I read the book in less than a week. So then I started doing outside studying. I went to the school library and started looking up stuff on Babylon. Well, as I'm doing that, I'm sitting there reading what Bible scholars and archaeologists had said about the fall, which I think they said was around 537 to 539, something like that. But the Watchtower organization put the date at 607. So I'm thinking, wait, if they actually have archaeological evidence, which is physical evidence that Babylon fell in a different year, well, I'm thinking, where did society come up with 607? So I remember going to my Wednesday night meeting, which was when we had the Theocratic Ministry School and Service meeting, and I asked one of the elders after the meeting, I have a question. Okay, so I was studying on Babylon the Great and the fall of Babylon the Great, and I saw that archaeologists say it happened around 537 to 539, and the Watchtower saying it was in 607. So how did they come up with their date when there's physical evidence that shows it was a different date? And I specifically remember the elder looked at me like I was crazy, number one. And then he told me that I needed to stick with what the society and the governing body gave me because they get their information from Jehovah. And that the knowledge outside of that could be tainted by Satan the devil. So I needed to stay away from that. I mean, you could have knocked me over with a feather because I'm thinking, but there's physical evidence. And so I said that to him. I said, but there's physical evidence. And he said, physical evidence could be fabricated. Okay. So I took that, put it on the shelf, and thought, okay, I guess I'm wrong. And I guess Jehovah will show me where I'm wrong or, correct me as need be. So that was the first time. That was the first time. So and then I remember so then I let that go. Now again, I was also not just a studier, but I was also an avid reader. And my mother, when she got her driver's license, because she didn't always have her driver's license. Oh God, that's another thing. Having to get a ride to the hall. Yeah. Anyway, so when she got her driver's license, she used to take us to the library. But the deal was that we had to make sure that our Watchtower and Awakes were read. Any books that had come out, new books or publications that come out, we were up to date on those, and that our studying was done. And then we could check out books from the library. Well, Miss Karen, who loved horror secretly, because that was not something I let people know, I remember checking out the Omen trilogy. I read the Omen trilogy. Now, of course, they talked about him being Antichrist. So, and this was actually before high school. So I'm actually, I'm not sticking to my notes. But anyway, this is before high school. I think I was about 12 or 13 when I read those. So I remember going to the book study after reading those. I'm such an idiot. Anyway, I remember asking about the Antichrist. I raised my hand during the book study and I asked a brother. I said, I was reading this book, and I said it just like this. I was reading this book, and it's called The Omen, and it was talking about the Antichrist. And so I was just wondering, do the scriptures show us or teach us how to be able to recognize the Antichrist? And the brother who conducted the book study, he was like, interesting question, Sister Sibri. Or he said Little Sister Sibri, because that's what he used to call us. How about you and I talk about that after the book study? Okay. Well, of course, I was counseled about my reading material. And that I shouldn't be reading things like that because I could be inviting demons into my home. And I was like, and dumb as I am, I was like, oh, okay, I understand. But what about the question about the Antichrist? He didn't want to discuss it. So that was actually the first time I realized you got to stop asking questions. But I, of course, then came up the thing about Babylon the Great because I was older then. But anyway, these situations taught me you don't ask questions. You keep them to yourself. So, from the point on with the one with Babylon, I learned, if I learn anything that contradicts what I was being taught, put it on shelf, forget it, or just study it for yourself. So, that was that. Now, being a witness in school. I remember elementary school and middle school because anytime anything came up like holidays or birthdays, Valentine's Day, they would always separate out the witness kids and send us to the library. That was just, I don't know how it's done in other states or other places, but school system that I went in, they would always separate us out and send us to the library. Now I lived in a small town, but there were quite a few witness kids that were in my schools growing up. So yeah, and I don't know why it didn't really bother me a whole lot that we were separated out. And I know some people say it made them feel weird, whatever, but it didn't bother me because again, at that time, and as young as I was, my mind was so wrapped up in what we were learning that I thought we have the truth. All them kids gonna die because they not following God's word. Now, by the time I got to high school, it was a little different. In high school, they didn't really separate us. They do it to younger kids. And it's because they don't really high school is just different. Even though the teachers would decorate the classrooms and some classes would do the gift exchange, they didn't separate us out. I guess they figured you close enough to an adult, you should be able to handle this. And again, with the holidays and things, I didn't feel so left out, but it was with other things. Like the drama club or kids going out after school just to go to McDonald's or something. Those kind of things I did kind of feel left out. And in high school, I was kind of a popular. I didn't think I was, but the principal thought I was. But I did make friends really easily. And again, that can be a problem if you make friends easily. Because these people were not witnesses and you really were not supposed to be associating with them socially. But I had one of my absolute best friends in high school was a gay guy. And I loved him to death. And so he was one that I spent most of my time with. And then another one's a friend of mine. I'll talk about her more later because eventually I studied with her and brought her in because I was given an ultimatum if I wanted to keep that friendship. But that's going to be a discussion for another video. So it was her, my other best friend who was gay, and then I kind of got along with a lot of other people. So I did get counseled about my associations because I was friends with people in school. But I learned to just, kind of keep it at school. Although I did have people call me. A lot of guys used to call me at home. And back then, you had a landline, so it wasn't like you had a cell phone and you could go hide. They would call the house. And I remember my mother, because she was the one that was in the truth. Oh, I hate saying that, but that's how we referred to it. Her question to me wasn't why do you have friendships with these people in the world? It was, don't you have any female friends? Because it was always guys calling the house. But I was friends with them. Because come on, I wasn't pretty or anything like that, so I was literally friends with these guys, and they would call the house, and it'd be dumb conversations. Like I remember one friend, I don't want to use people's names. It's hard to talk about it without names. He would call and he would do stupid stuff like heating up chocolate milk in the microwave, because microwaves was a new thing then. And he was like, "Did you hear the ding? Did you hear the ding?" And my mother was just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that." But that's the kind of dumb stuff we would do. But all the same, I wasn't supposed to be friends with them. So eventually, a brother at the hall found out, and I was talked to about my associations. But a significant thing I remember from high school, and I feel like I'm all over the place, was, and again, because I was a person that liked to study. So I actually had got all my credits to graduate high school a year early. And my grades were good. I had nearly a 4.0. I was like a 3.9. So I remember being called down to my guidance counselor's office, Mr. Shadrick, and he wanted to discuss with me schools. Because he's like, I went over your records, your grade point average is pretty good, you have all your credits, you can graduate high school this year. And it was a year early. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I wanted to graduate with my friends. I did not want to come out early. So he was talking to me about AP. So I did take a few AP classes. But then when he was discussing schools, I had to tell him, well, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they don't really encourage us to do higher education, so I'm probably just going to, become a regular pioneer when I come out. You would have thought that I had struck that man with lightning, because he looked at me like, what? And he went into, I understand, I'm a Catholic, because everybody was Catholic in my county. And he's like, I'm a Catholic, and I understand, and I have a strong belief in God too. He's like, but God would want you to take care of yourself, and one way to do that is by getting a good education so that you can get a good paying job and be able to support yourself. Now, mind you, I really did want to go to school. I had this dream of getting my law degree and then going to Quantico and studying to become a profiler, because one of the other things that I was obsessed with back then was serial killers and the Italian mob. So I thought, I could become a lawyer, then go and learn to become a profiler, and then I could work with the FBI, and I could get to meet these people and talk to them and find out what makes them tick. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, I could do all that, but I talked to, because of course, everything you do, you talk to the elders. I went to the elders, I talked to them about what Mr. Shatter said. Of course, by the time they did their Jedi mind tricks on me, I was like, no, I'm going to be a pioneer. I'm just going to do that. And I went back and talked to Mr. Shadrick. He was extremely extremely disappointed. Extremely disappointed. But he let it go. So I think I'm probably gonna end here. Anyway, I did graduate high school with my friends. I waited a year, and all I did was really play that last year because it really wasn't going to affect anything. So I graduated and had a ball. Graduated, and I'll tell you what happened post-graduation, and that's when we'll go into the good friend that was the one female friend that I had, and the ultimatum that I was given if I wanted to keep that friendship. But I'll go into that in the next video, because that's a pretty significant time in my life. So thanks you guys for watching. Sorry I was all over the place. I'll try and clarify anything that I didn't really clarify, I guess. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. So enjoy your weekend. And I'm